starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. Today is December 21st, 2020, and this is a meeting of the State Street Subcommittee. Ms. Barea, could you please take roll call?
I sure can. Chair Harmon, please.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Sneddon.
Here.
Councilmember Gutierrez.
Present.
Thank you, Ms. Perea. And we will move to preliminary matters. Mr. Harris, are there any announcements for us today?
Next slide, please, Holly. Announcement-wise, I'll just give a broad update. We have some guest presenters coming up on the next item, so looking forward to that. And then would also just like to give notice that we're working on not only the design aspects of parklets, but also on the storm flow and starting to evaluate how to assist businesses. And then just lastly, the mayor, Mr. Casey, myself, and others were convened the COVID-19 Business Advisory Task Force this morning, giving update and taking in a testimony. And so we'll be processing a lot of good information. There's a lot of relevancy into what we're talking about on State Street and parklets. And so obviously looking to do what we can to support businesses. Next slide, Miss Holly Perea. And then just next slide, please. The updated agenda review. So we have update on State Street management, as I was referencing. The next order of business, we'll be having an update on the future of State Street visioning, a report out. We'll be having the third item, a State Street Next Step Subcommittee meeting schedule, and then adjournment. Next slide, please. Next, approval of minutes of December 7th, 2020. Chair.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Harris. To my colleagues, if there are any comments on the minutes of the December 7th, 2020 meeting, if none, I will entertain a motion for approval of those minutes. My colleagues could pop on. Mayor Pro Tem?
Motion to approve?
I will second that motion. Ms. Perea, if we could please have a roll call vote for the approval of the minutes. Thank you.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Sneddon.
Yes.
Councilmember Gutierrez.
Yes.
Chair Harmon.
Yes, and that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Before we begin, I would like to open the floor to general public comment. If there's anyone who has joined us for this meeting today who would like to make a public comment related to items that are not on today's agenda, now would be the time. So if you will raise your hand, you'll have 2 minutes to speak. Ms. Perea, is there anyone that wishes to speak for general public comment?
Yes, we have one speaker for general comment. That's Anna Gott. Anna Gott, feel free to go ahead and unmute yourself and speak.
Good morning, council members. I just wanted to talk about the bike share program in the coastal zone. I don't know if any of you actually watched the Planning Commission meeting and saw the presentation that was delivered by staff. Staff had said that, you know, all of the locations in the coastal zone had been reviewed by ABR and HLC, and that isn't the truth. For example, the ABR actually saw a presentation that included a row of a bank of docks directly in front of Ambassador Park. However, the HLC never saw that, and when it went to the Planning Commission, that entire row of docks that were supposed to be placed directly in front of Ambassador Park were removed. Why were they removed? Because there's no way the Planning Commission, the Coastal Commission would have ever approved that, and it should have never even been proposed, because that is a scenic corridor, and it would have prevented views from the park to actually look out into the ocean across Cabrillo. You know, another place that the staff actually proposed that is never going to see the light of day is the bus turnout at directly in front of the train station on State Street. Do you know that they wanted to place bike docks directly in that bus turnout that would have prevented a bus from actually turning in to drop off passengers, pick up passengers, and to prevent the public from doing the same? They actually said during the meeting that they had talked to the MTD and they were fine with that. Well, guess what? The MTD didn't know about that location until after the planning department gave the coastal development permit. And then guess what happened? They actually contacted the city, and there's not going to be putting bike docks there because the MTD wants that space for the bus. So you have to ask yourself, does staff really have the ability to choose the locations by themselves without public comment or public participation? And it's something that you need to think about. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Any additional speakers, Ms. Perea?
No further speakers.
Great, thank you. With that, we will close general public comment and move on to the first agenda item. I believe we have Mr. Grumbine and Ms. Ensberg here to help us, and just got to start by expressing my sincere appreciation to have them with us today. I know we're all really excited to hear from them, and grateful for their work. Thank you. Mr. Harris, I'll turn it over.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Jason Harris, Economic Development Manager of the city, here to introduce two fine architects in our community. One, Mr. Anthony Grumbine, he is the chair of the Historic Landmarks Commission in Cass Ensberg, a very notable architect, highly engaged citizen, and a key team member of the AIA Charette and all the AIA, that's American Institutes of Architects, Santa Barbara chapter initiatives here in downtown. They've offered and have been leading a collaborative team of architects and artists and engaged representatives in evaluating the design of the parklets and the city's design guidelines. And they have 8 slides of thoughts and input that they're going to be reviewing with us. And then just the last comment I will make before we transition to their presentation is the city's also evaluating, as we've been discussing, the storm flow, water condition. We do have kind of a priority risk map that we're working off of, and recognizing the challenge that businesses, restaurants particularly, are facing with the stay-at-home order and the inability to have any level of dining, even in the outdoor parklets. The city's evaluating what we can do to assist in implementation of the storm flow modifications needed. So with that, Ms. Perea, if you could transition so I could share my screen and pull up the architect's presentation. Excellent. And with that, I will pull my screen up. And with that, hopefully everyone can see that on the screen. I don't have a public screen sharing capability, but with that, I have the opening slide. Mr. Grumbine and Ms. Ensberg, I will drop off the video and let you present these presentation slides. Oh, sorry, hit the wrong button. That's right. There we go.
Great. Thanks, Jason. Why don't we do this as a just sort of a general kind of do a sort of a big picture zoom out overview of what our purpose and how we are here, and then Cass and I can do maybe a sort of a handoff back and forth. But really, Cass, if you don't mind kind of marching through the presentation once, and I'll do a little kind of a prelude and jump in with any comments along the way if you want to kind of go that way, and then we can do a wrap up at the end and then discussion as appropriate. But so just as a sort of an overview, so everyone understands, this was a big but very quick effort, and I wanted to thank everyone, all the professionals especially, that have donated their services and time as part of this effort. So Cass, of course, as Jason mentioned, and then Paul Rupp, John Margolis, Ellen Bildstein, Yvonne Ibarra, Courtney Miller, and Robert Adams, all of which are design either architects or landscape architects within the community, who we've kind of got together for the last couple of weeks, just a sort of a 2-week blitz to come up with these ideas. And the general idea and principle was that everything is based on the COVID response, trying to make the city as beautiful as possible, but as well just to get businesses to survive this time. So sort of looking at that, not wanting to do any burden on or any additional burden on businesses, but at the same time also trying to make what will actually elevate, at least for however long COVID lasts, until everything can go back inside, what the street is like and the experience. As well, one of the other key concepts of this is, because this is a sort of emergency period and all the exceptions are being made sort of on the fly, it's also a chance to actually test out some of these things, because we're forced to shut down State Street and forced to do all these things. So it's actually a nice time to test out some ideas that have been talked about for many years, and with the future visioning of State Street and future visioning of the city as part of that thought process. So it's kind of, there's a both and to this thought process. So we're not just looking at what can be work emergency wise, but also starting to think through what could be the longer term potentials and possibilities, knowing that, and this is really key, I think, that everyone understands this, that this, whatever we do now could give us good input and good data and good, trying out of things, that whether they work or not, but for the future conversation, which has to go through Historic Landmarks Commission, as well as whatever other review bodies that are needed, or not review bodies, but review that's needed, to really discuss about what an interim State Street looks like, as well as what a long-term State Street looks like. So this is sort of the immediate, case that we're dealing with, but we're looking at the midterm and also looking towards the long term. So that's the goal. All right. So Kath, I'll let you take it away. With that spiel. Oh, I think you're muted.
Ms. Ensberg, you're muted.
There, how's that? Better?
Perfect.
Okay. Thank you, Anthony, and thank you, Chair Harmon, and subcommittee and staff. We really appreciate being invited to be here. We are, part of the community, and we want to do what we can within our abilities to help the city to be as beautiful and prosperous as possible. So this is just, so thank you very much. And we, again, as Anthony said, what we really want to underscore is that we're here to help with suggestions. These are for whenever business owners are ready for it, and it's possible that these are put out there as ideas for them to think about as they move forward, and that they may want to implement. These ideas that we have come up with are very simple and basically inexpensive remedies. So this first slide is just, obviously since the COVID hit, and trying to help the community, and especially the restaurants and the business owners, the city did allow for what are called parklets, these constructions and other features to be in the public way. And that this is, temporary to help the businesses out and help us get through what we're calling the interim period. So again, these just shows some of the existing conditions that we have right now. What we are doing is just to simply look for and suggest simple ways to organize and bring together for an overall look for this interim period to address this array of conditions and try to pull it together in an aesthetically pleasing way that still allows for variety and expression. Next slide, please. Yeah, and then I think Anthony already touched on this, but we felt that this was an urgent situation. This one slide on the right, I guess, really kind of sums it all up, that we know that this was all done for the purpose of helping the community to survive this pandemic. And so we had to quickly move and cause these things to be able to create the promenade and to make it possible for the dining outside. But we think that there's some things that we can do to tidy up and to make. So again, just showing some of the existing conditions. Anthony already mentioned our team of architects, professionals who came forward to help with this. What we think is really important, especially with hey, it's going to be the 25th this week. So we want it to look as nice and beautiful as possible. I also want to thank, the city staff, Rob Dayton, Jason Harris, Nina Johnson, Elizabeth Sorgman, and Mark Aguilar. We met with them last week on the promenade and walked up and down to look at everything together, and it was really helpful to have input from them. We obviously have to all work together as a team. Next slide. And then Anthony, if I forget something, just please jump in, okay?
Sure.
So one thing that in general, just sort of some general design concepts that we always think of as architects. This is a list of some of them, and we wanted just to remind everyone to think of State Street as an outdoor garden room, and that the walls of the buildings, or the buildings create the walls, and the dining areas are on patios. So if we think about it that way, that we're outside on a patio in this beautiful room, these rooms that you can see. And here's some examples of some very simple layouts that a couple of the several store owners did that are very effective and very simple and very cost effective. So the basic principles are, to create order, to simplify and eliminate clutter, to design for flexibility, modular and movable, so that, different conditions could be accommodated. You can see this on the left where they just have pots and some cords between. Also on the far right here, and then in the middle, they just use some simple plantings to create an enclosure. But these obviously could be easily moved if they wanted to expand or reduce the area based on whatever the conditions are that we have. Use simple outdoor patio furniture, use low maintenance plants, and have a maintenance plan. And think and work together with your neighbors for the benefit of all, so that everyone all moves forward together and everybody benefits. Finally, signage is so critical. Good signage that is beautiful and clear and artistic is really important for the branding and for all signs, including for the city signs and for restaurant signs. Anthony already mentioned about the prototypes and this great opportunity to, experiment right now with some different kinds of applications that could, and see how they really work, as we move forward. Okay, next slide. Anthony, do you want to talk about this one so I'm not the only one talking?
Sure, I'll jump in. Yeah, so I think some of the basic design principles that we sort of elaborated on was the idea of having either repeated types and or strategies. And so in this case, we have the pot and using range from large pots to small pots, and then in combination with the simple outdoor patio furniture, and rather than sort of a hodgepodge of absolutely everything. It's understandable that everyone did everything before because there was no sort of aesthetic, basic, here's some options to work from. So instead it was sort of a free-for-all. But the idea is using all EPV approved, plant materials and palettes, colors, selecting from that source, which I'm sure that I'm sure that sometimes some people thought of it, but just having that being the sort of a codified or even giving a sort of a sampling of them, a select numbers of colors. And we were tending towards the darker palettes for a lot of those structures that we'll get into. But for plants, having sort of this terracotta or other of the you know, more natural colors, and then some design strategies for those pots as well, so that they're structured properly. Yeah, I think those were kind of the key. Oh, and the movability that Cass was talking about as well. You know, by allowing for different spacing and then having this sort of a garden frontage, it keeps what is a giant sea of asphalt. It keeps it very soft and also very you know, plant friendly and alive. So those were some of our concepts for that. Oh, the other piece was they can be used instead of a lot of the ugly big stuff that's blocking for traffic and for other things. Start to use those as the organization tools for State Street, which if State Street does stay pedestrian long term, that's obviously going to be part of the strategy. So that feeds into we can kind of start to see how bikes and pedestrians and others can work together nicely using different arrangements of pots and other things to help kind of control the flow a bit. So those were the key thoughts with that.
I'll just add on to that is, for example, in the 900 block and the 1000 block, where there aren't as many restaurants in the street at this point anyway, it's a big broad area of asphalt, and so some of these images, like on the far right here, these large pots with the trees in, these could be used in the center of the street or perhaps on either side, arranged in a sort of a alley type of way that could help to bring green to the street. You know, like Anthony is saying, reduce the pavement, you know, parking lot street feel, and give it some softness. So this would be a way that the city could add more of these large pots and create an outdoor room and help to create that outdoor room of the street.
And actually, this is probably a good time to bring up a related point, which is that for everyone's benefit, a lot of pieces are already in work, are in the works, right? So that certain batches of certain pots have already been ordered and are going to be coming. And part of our exercise here is not necessarily to say like whatever's already been done and built and ordered and whatever needs to change. We're not saying that at all, but we're saying as things roll forward, because obviously this isn't the only thing that's going to be bought or the only thing that's going to be built. So as new things are built and bought and ordered, to sort of have a better framework and a better aesthetic framework to work within. So that's part of the goal. And that also ties to one more thing that I'd forgotten to mention, which is, or to really hit home, which is those people who have been following, the city has had guidelines for parklets for, you know, the last, 6 months. So they've been following those guidelines, and we're in no means trying to go backwards on anything that has already been done. It's really about going forward. So for those that are building new, to kind of refine it a little bit, have some better design guidelines for the parklets going forward new. And then those that are modifying, maybe they can get inspired by some of these ways in which to make something a little more beautiful and modify if they are already modifying their structures, modify it to help fit more closely into this type of thing. So that's also as a note for those business owners and others that might be out there saying, oh my gosh, are they going to make us go backwards and do all these things? No, we're talking about, it's all forward looking, but as we go forward, start thinking it through in this manner, not just for the COVID response, but also thinking about it for the future as well. Because again, this is a good time to test some of these ideas of organization and types and see what we like, what we don't like, and what we might not want to repeat. So, all right.
Okay. This one just also talking about, you know, art, signage, and color, and how important these things are. And again, working with the neighbors, you know, have conversations, work together, try to come up with something that is going to be synergistic for everyone. These are just some great images of our city that we all recognize during Fiesta, and just showing how you know, banners and artwork need to be they're very important and need to be considered in all of this. So these are just, inspiring you to think about this and to see how we can move forward with that. Santa Barbara, we say arty equals Santa Barbara. We are a city of artists, and we're very proud of it. So we need to continue to embrace our artists and see how we can get that piece of it, that element that expresses, just the architecture all the way down to, every component has an artistic aspect to it. So we can go to the next slide. Anthony, do you want to take this one?
Sure, I'll jump in this one. Okay, so a lot of the discussion was also on the relationship of pedestrians, bikes, which at HLC we've seen, and not just HLC, I know others as well, the discussion of what is safe, what feels safe, what belongs with what in terms of circulation, how to get to be a comfortable outdoor room and a comfortable outdoor promenade that can work for everyone, kind of thing. And so that was those were sort of the big picture of that of circulation. And as in general, when we discussed this, our conclusion was that most, if not all of us, agreed on was that in general we should both keep bikes as part of State Street, at least that makes sense for now. But the main question is, could we do through design, through layout, how could we get through organization there to be just a natural, more naturally slower paced walk to this? And we've also looked at other cities. I think Ventura has you can only walk your bike only on Main Street, or do a very low speed might be a way. And then in addition with it, some layers of like these pots and the way in which intersections, and maybe there's mid-block treatment as well, but the way in which by just having things there, people will naturally slow down. As soon as you open everything up, it becomes a freeway where you fly through. So if you're wheeled, then part of the idea was, if we design things to have this both the outdoor room, and also for the pedestrian as this pedestrian promenade, even though the sidewalk is still number one, and all accessibility and everything else is still on the sidewalk, but the main street as well, or the center of the street as well, to have it be pedestrian oriented for everyone, so that they can all work, all travel together, but at just slower speed. So our recommendation was to do something like either a slow maximum speed, like 5 miles an hour, or easy jog, or however it wants to be defined. But we did see other areas that did that, and it does seem to work, at least to some degree, or at least help to work. So that was one idea that we wanted to throw out. We also know that certain things are already underworked, and so these are ideas that we're bringing up. And if they can't be implemented now because it's already, there's already deals made and agreements made, and there's already a plan in place and everything's already rolling, that's understandable. We would ask that the city work as best they can with us. This happened when you all volunteered me to work with the e-bikes and go up and down and basically just help locate all the e-bikes on State Street. And with Rob, we did that, and crew, we did that in one afternoon, a couple hours, and we're able to kind of aesthetically tweak where the e-bikes were. So if they're, and obviously those are already under contract as well. So our recommendation, and my recommendation would be that if there are things under contract and going forward, that there still is some input from our group, or those in our group that are willing to donate their time to kind of help finesse anything that's finessable at this point. So, and then moving forward, that we're thinking along those lines of working the aesthetic together with these new pieces that are coming in. The other issue was the color, and this also there might be other things, but we want to bring it up as an important point, is that there is a psychological thing where, for bikes, and this actually came from a number of the bikers in the group, was that when you see the green, you kind of hit the gas for that. This is your bike lane, And so that might not be, it might be another solution that there might be instead of doing green for the paint. So that was one thing that we discussed. And then the large scale planters, and we discussed this with the city staff as well during the walk, as the potential for talking with transportation and others about using large scale planters going forward as, or how many you would need, for example, to be the equivalent of a concrete barricade or one of the plastic water barricades, so that we're really using beautiful big things as opposed to our big concrete freeway, more freeway appropriate or plastic water filled ones for keeping things safe from cars. So that was one issue, and then the overhead lighting design. In general, so they're at the crosswalks, or maybe there's other spots too, but there's the nice, the only HLC approved string lights that would have little hoods, and they're, you know, dark sky friendly as well in terms of shining down. And they're also expensive, so we understand that that's not going to be go out and buy a ton of those right now, but those at regular intervals make sense across the street. But we do think kind of going forward, we went back and forth within the group about string lights, and because it's so complex to try to figure out any sort of, there's so many different conditions, it's very difficult to figure out any version of string lights that'll work as a regular concept or a regular design strategy. We're in general, it landed with basically it needs to be going forward, if there's going to be continue to be a closed street post-COVID, then even as a sort of a middle period time for a couple of years or whatever, before the actual plan gets executed or gets developed and then executed, then at least a decent lighting study should be done with a good lighting consultant to figure out how to make them as less hodgepodgey and crisscrossy and, you know, tied to different things, and kind of be a more organized, coherent, you know, design. So that was one thing that we just, it was kind of a bit to tackle because there were so many conditions. So we just kind of said, well, to be determined later.
Thank you. And I'm going to just jump in briefly here. I really appreciate this. I want to just remind everybody that the item today was agendized to talk about parklet design standards. So I want to just be mindful of our requirements to discuss what's on the agenda.
Sure.
So we could just try to make sure we are just as aware of that as possible. I want to make sure that we don't run afoul of the Brown Act in any way, and just reminding myself and everybody, my colleagues as well, that we're looking at parklet design standards here today. Thank you so much.
Okay, and speaking of which, here we are, parklets. we finally have our main parklet slide. So, Cass, do you want to go into this one, or do you want me to? How do you want to do it?
Well, I can give it a shot.
Yeah.
I guess to say that we you know, that the parklets are in the, you know, public right of way, and that they are temporary, and we assume they'll be required to be removed at some point whenever we get past the pandemic period. So we are wanting to respond to aesthetic issues. There's a lot of issues with regard to the parklets, which are generally in the street, although they can be on the sidewalk. But there are a lot of issues related to storm drainage and accessibility that are extremely complicated and you know, difficult to achieve. So we're trying, and the city has documents that the city is responsible for that, all of that, and so we need to respect that and to leave that in the city's realm. But we can certainly have further discussions about it, and we are wanting to give help to address the visual impact is what we're trying to address right now. That's where we feel that we are able to give input.
Yeah, and so along that lines, I think our general goal was look at sort of from the simple, like all the examples that have been built, and what are some of the ones that were the most successful, and then kind of tweak those into sort of general aesthetic guidelines, right? So we started off, and this little illustration on the bottom left shows starting off with sort of the simplest mode, and the photographs above show this as well. So the simplest mode is, having the parklet on the street, and then using planters. In this case, you have little rectangular planters, bottom left. And actually, if you could zoom in maybe a little bit, this might be helpful to. There's a small diagram.
Can we make it bigger? On the lower right? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah,
Anthony?
lower left, yeah, that one right there.
Oh,
I don't
yeah,
know
right.
if you can zoom in or not. But so, and if we can zoom in, great. Otherwise, we can just we'll keep going. So that little diagram on the left just shows planter. It has little rope and swag between, and it could be a little ballast or something for holding it, and then or it could be connected to the planters. And basically, you've created your parklet and defined it by having a series of planters. And so you basically have to create this green edge, and then very simply with chairs and umbrellas, you've created shades. And so it's sort of the oh, there we go. Okay.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So then in this very simple method, and you got a little ramp down that works, and if the numbers work in terms of slope and everything, or slope down. And then so you create this little parklet, and you have both the sort of visual screening, but in a very low key manner. One of the key principles that we noticed going up and down was that the less things felt like giant structures, the more the street as a whole read as the room, right? So the outdoor room needs to feel the building walls, and to feel the building walls, you need to see through the structure and to the building. And so one of the things that we really wanted to accentuate was the things that are the lightest and sort of the most minimal are visually the lightest and most minimal are the ones that are the most successful to help make the whole street feel like a whole outdoor room. The ones that are the heavier structures tend to feel like you kind of built this annex, a big kind of block, and it's yours. And so it takes away from the whole larger street as a principle. So we are encouraging those that still have all the same seating and still get the requirements if you want overhead to do a very light structure, and that's the far right one. But the middle one was sort of an in-between where you have a railing, and what we thought was the ideal was if you're going to do railing, do like the black wrought iron railing. It kind of goes the way the most. Or if you're going to do wood, then just do kind of minimal top rail rather than the fence, like the sort of Home Depot fencing that would have the picket fence popping up above, because that's a picket fence look and not an actual rail that's defining an outdoor space. And then having vertical members is really important instead of going horizontal, because that's a basic design principle for EPB. So that was where we were kind of going with this next example was pot. Oh, another thing is you'll notice pots. So pots and planters being really important for Santa Barbara and for the image and for just the visual impact, and actually it makes the restaurant look nicer too. So it's kind of all in. It's aesthetically better for everyone, even if you just have corner accents or corner and a center accent, but just having some integration of pots and plants as well helps the whole street to feel alive and light and open in between. So that was the second version. And then the third version on the right was have a little more structure as required just for overhead coverage, whether it's lighting or whatever it is. That's been accepted by the city thus far. So we figured that's fine, keep going with that, but just keep it as minimal as possible rather than big heavy structures that really start to feel like a building. And so once it starts to feel like a solid building and solid mass, you start to take away from the rest of the street, and it starts to become this big solid in the middle of a big void that's supposed to be the room. So that's the kind of general design principle. So keeping it as light as possible, understanding that during COVID, we want everyone to be able to be as open, and obviously they also can't even enclose more than one side for wind protection. So So it's only going to be a one-sided structure as well. So that was sort of, and the last part was, as the city's guidelines show, for stormwater management, they show building above the curb or above on top of the sidewalk for flow. And so this one shows that actually having a structure on the floor to walk on that's above that sidewalk, above that water flow per the city's guidelines. The other ones show it as just being on the state street, which is also allowed in the guidelines as well. So both of them all these are allowed for the guidelines of the cities, but the ones on the right are the heavier structured ones. The ones on the left is the simplest and lightest, and actually most preferable in general. If that works for your business, that's the one that's most preferable because it actually makes for a better outdoor room. As that picture, the bigger picture shows. So did I get it, Cass?
All right, yes, that's exactly right. The other thing was we were trying to, for all the reasons that Anthony just said, to keep the structure low. So moving forward, like you see in the one on the left and in the middle. And that for lighting, we do need to have street lighting, city lighting, and how that's going to be designed or what that will be, we don't know. But in the interim, we think that rather than trying to put overhead lighting like you would have in this third version on the right, with poles going up and then the lights strung as we have seen, another possibility would be to use, white twinkle or white lights, not twinkling, white lights in the plantings themselves. So on the left here and in the middle, you can see how if you have planters with plants in them, you could actually string lights down low and not have to have them overhead. We're trying to get away from the overhead because we want to experience the beautiful architecture in our city that we work so hard to create.
Yep, good point.
Yeah.
And then go for it on this one.
So here shows different ways. This one in the middle above is just planters. We're recommending that anything that is new that's constructed, that we go with the dark color, black, just to have it recede and go away and not start competing with the architecture itself. In this image you see with all the red geraniums, if those pots were white, for example, they would start competing with the white of the building. So by making them dark, and since we have so many disparate elements, we have people with metal enclosures like on the lower left there, or like a fence situation. If everything just stays dark, black, then it all ties together and it doesn't become such a cacophony of different elements. It just makes them all kind of tie together. So that's what this is showing. And then below here is just showing an example of what could be done if someone had, this was a fence with the pickets on the top that you'd see more typically not in a downtown area. So one way of mitigating that might be to just clip off the tips to the upper rail and then put a cap on it, and then just do some pots on the inside with some vines that you could start feeding through the fence to help soften it. So that's another really easy way that you could just work with what you have, but modify it a little bit to make it fit in better with the EPV. And on the left here, what we're showing is, Anthony mentioned wrought iron. Wrought iron, of course, is beautiful, but it is expensive. This business owner just used a regular black metal railing, not expensive, but also works really pretty well for here. So we think that's a good solution. Again, we think all of these with some plantings is really important. So the combination of plants strategically placed, and plants like these geraniums are great. They're California native plants. The agave, the aloes, different types of plants that can work really well. And we can get the help from our landscape architects on all that. I think that was it on this slide, just showing different ways to improve it. Anthony, you want to take this one?
Sure. Okay, so Yeah, so this is also just to highlight some of the materials that we thought were not, or that materials that are not appropriate for EPV, and especially if you can do it another way, that we shouldn't, at least going forward, shouldn't have any more of. So ideally, pop-up tents are not the best solution. It starts to look like sort of encampments. Outdoor carpeting or faux lawn products as well. They're already on the top hated list of EPV, of the Historic Landmarks Commission. The plastic or vinyl fences, lattice work, so the crisscross lattice work, and the trellising, that kind of stuff is all. There's no need to do that. That's not. It's the sort of the opposite of where we want to go with it. Sandwich board signing, picket fencing, the picket fences in general. If you can do it another way, even without the picket, and still meet all the requirements, which it seems like you could, because there's plenty that did, that would be more ideal than actually having a picket fence. The picket fence says you're in someone's backyard or front yard, suburban. So it's the wrong visual. And if you can do it another way, even with just a rope or something that's simple, you can still get the function out of it that you need. And then the cap that Cass had talked about, the image on the far right here shows the opposite of that, shows the picket coming up above and being spiky and being that sort of either a front yard fence or suburban look. And so the idea of just kind of cutting things off and having a cap, it just makes it feel at least like it's an outdoor, more like a deck space as opposed to a front yard border. So that's a simple way to augment those. But then anyone going forward wouldn't even have to do that. They could just do the simple metal wrought iron. I'm calling it wrought iron, but Cass is right. It's not actually wrought iron. It's just a simple metal vertical picket that you can get like Home Depot or something. But they at least will go away visually. And then the wood lattice I mentioned, and then the hinged metal pet enclosures. For anyone who is wondering, that you could do better, but it worked for the time being. It got things going, but there was at least one or two of those that we saw as well. And then excessive decoration, obviously hard to define, but at least encouraging people to not get too gaudy with things. And just kind of and also working with neighbors, keeping things simple, elegant, and at least coincide in some way is a nice way of kind of making your own property look better because you're playing up as well with the neighbors. So it's a nice design move that also has benefits both ways. Anything else, Kath?
Yeah, I just think, as far as the visual, imagine, you're in a garden space with, you're walking down the street, there's lots of greenery that doesn't come up too high, but it comes up high enough so that when you're sitting on the other side, you have a little bit of protection, but you're not trying to completely enclose it. You're just trying to make a separation. You have this nice greenery going down. You have your, some really nice signage. That's what's your real brand. That's how you can really identify yourself. So just keeping those, basic principles, design principles in mind. And I think then we can have, the kind of unique flavor that everybody wants to have. We don't want to squelch creativity, but we want to do it all within a cohesive way that is going to benefit everybody in the big picture.
It's okay. You say you don't want to squelch creativity, but I'll say I'll squelch it. Just kidding. And actually, I did want to add a few more notes. So there are also some other diagrams, and obviously we literally were starting drawing like Friday, and got cranked out over the weekend because a lot of it was just analysis and coming together with design principles. So there are some diagrams for plants and ways in which to do it beautifully with a larger piece and then have smaller pieces down below that Courtney and Robert had been working at as well. So this is, although this is a presentation and a report back to the subcommittee, this is also hopefully a part of an ongoing dialogue, and we'll keep feeding material and helping staff and others as needed bring up the game in terms of the aesthetic that is being an aesthetic, not expensive wise, but just in terms of organization design wise, the aesthetic of where all these pieces are going. So it's a sort of interim, well, I don't want to use that word to use it in reference to other things, but it's the sort of middle of the stream right now is where we are. I see it where this presentation is showing you the pieces and the thought and where things are going. But we'll even have some, like the pots example, have specific species and recommendations, and species for the larger, species for the smaller stuff in the pots, and things like that. So it's part of the ongoing effort. So, and then I would say a few more closing things, and then Cass, if you want to jump in and add as well. But I think part of the hopefully some of the stuff is good things that you're seeing and helpful, and seeing how we're trying to help working with staff and making the sort of more refined State Street in this interim period, and try to help and keep the businesses going. And then even in the long term, keep State Street vibrant and viable. So that's sort of as a key goal. One thing I was hoping that this would also show is that it is, I think that this is a good example of a decent amount of work very quickly, and helping to use one of the resources that Santa Barbara has that a lot of other communities don't have, which is a number of really great, extremely high caliber professionals that are that basically love the community and are willing to jump in and help, especially during emergency times, and especially to help the community and help keep things going. So I'm hoping that this demonstrates as well to the city that this is an important resource that they have that very few other cities have, that would be good to utilize all the goodwill and the hard work of so many very talented professionals that are willing to just do it because it's a good thing to do for the community. So, all right. And then anything else that you had to add, Cass?
My only last comment, and how a lot of this kind of started, is we just need to, this is our where we live, this is our community. We want it to be as beautiful as possible, just as we do in our own homes. So I would just wish, I know that the new pots have been ordered, and I know there's going to be installed in mid-January. I just would really love it if we could do something about those, the potted palms. It just seems that they could have a little bit of adjustment and care. They could just look really a lot better.
The current existing ones.
Yes, the current existing ones. If we could just give them a little attention, and I know maybe we don't have the money for it, but I would volunteer to come downtown and meet a crew and help them to make those adjustments if that could happen before the 25th. I think it would be a tremendous gift to the community. And the rest of this is all things we can continue to talk about, and hopefully this is helpful moving forward. And thank you again for allowing us to come today and to present.
My thanks to both of you and to everyone who worked on this and putting it together so quickly. It's clear that you guys devoted a huge amount of time and energy. So before I open it up to questions, I just wanted to share my sincere appreciation to both of you. So with that, I will open it up to my colleagues. If we could try to confine it to questions at this point, and specifically related to the parklets, as that is what was agendized, that would be great. Councilmember Gutierrez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for that presentation. That was pretty awesome. The only question I had is how much of research and input have you gone into regarding the environmental impacts of these parklets? I know that some of the materials are treated with toxic chemicals, and I'm just worried about that being left into or being swept into our gutters and wildlife possibly consuming it. So I just wanted to know if there was any input from the environmental side of these parklets.
So, would you like us to respond now? And Cass, you can jump in too. So for our end of things, for what our task was, it was the aesthetic, on the aesthetic side of things, it wasn't environmental. But all I would say that just off the bat, the things that we're recommending, which are no AstroTurf, pots, the iron or the metal, the railing, simpler posts, and not having the not having pickets or minimal pickets. Those are all directions that I would say are definitely going towards a much less environmentally impactful solution. So all those things in general, the only thing I can think of off the top of my head would be treated wood. If you use treated wood for your frames of things, but even then you wouldn't have to because these aren't supposed to be permanent. So in general, I would say all the things that we are recommending would actually be probably definitely down a more environmentally friendly avenue. That would be my initial gut response. Cass, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree, and I think that, you know, as Anthony said, you know, that first version that we showed that was just the simple pots with the cord in the street, that allows everything to, you know, the drainage can all happen as it exists now. It doesn't impede. So we feel like that's the most simple, direct approach. If we could do anything we wanted to, and we could just start over and just do it that way, that would then there would be no treated wood or anything would not even be coming into the picture.
Thank you. Councilmember Gutierrez. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have no questions, but I'll have comments and discussion when the time comes. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I have no questions either. It was a very thorough presentation. So with that, Ms. Perea, I would like to open this up to public comment. I'm sure there are a couple folks who want to give us their thoughts.
Yes, we have multiple hands raised.
And actually,
Let's go ahead and start with Rob.
Can I ask a quick, just a quick note? I had forgotten to mention it as well. Those members on our team that could make it, we'd ask them as well to jump in and throw their 2 cents in via this period as well. I just want to give you a heads up. I was supposed to mention that at the beginning, but okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Ms. Perea. Please go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to call on Robin Elander first. It was my mistake. She actually did have her hand raised for general comment, so I believe she has comments possibly for both items, but that was my error. So I'm going to call on her first, and we'll hear what she has to say. And Robin Elander, you're welcome to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you, Holly. Thank you, council members, and thank you, presenters. What a wonderful presentation. I wanted to just come on and share some of the ways that the downtown organization is supporting downtown businesses right now during these unprecedented times. Some of the ways that we are supporting businesses include regular Instagram live interview series. So we have pivoted significantly to support businesses. We're doing a Downtown Spotlight weekly interview series, and also trying to get resources out to our businesses regularly as the PPP opportunities come out at the federal level, as well as at the state level with recent grants for $25,000. We will also be helping to distribute that information to our businesses. Also, regarding this last presentation, I think that it's wonderful to see the different direction and guidelines. What I want to just bring up is that the businesses that did set up parklets in different spaces, all of that was done very much in an emergency fashion. And moving ahead, depending on how long we are going to be in this interim phase and moving ahead, I think it's great to have these additional guidelines to kind of streamline these efforts. But as we consider how we want to make those changes, I want to just be clear that our businesses are in a very challenged state right now. Income has hardly been coming in the past several weeks to months. And as we consider making these changes, please take that into consideration in terms of your timing and how these structures are changed. And thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Elander. Next speaker, please, Ms. Perea.
Okay, next speaker is Leslie Wiscombe. Ms. Wiscombe, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you, Ms. Perea. Good morning, Madam Chair and council subcommittee members. I just want to thank Commissioner Grumbine and Ms. Ensberg and their team for their incredibly hard and efficient work on developing these inspirations for the parklets on State Street. They're going to go a long way towards improving the organization and look of State Street, both short and longer term. I was agreed that they had made the suggestion that you use a slow maximum speed for bikes on State Street. And I think potentially eliminating the green paint for bikes, particularly since the comment from the cyclists was that they will view that as an exclusive area to go faster, is worthy of consideration. Simplicity is the key. They emphasize that. I think that's very important. And using the planters, they're very appropriate to break up and add interest and soften the spaces. I like the idea of the lights in the planters, and I think moving forward, the dark colors is very important in terms of accentuating the background architecture of our fabulous buildings. And lastly, I appreciate the comment about them working with neighbors. I think we all need to work together during this pandemic, and it's important to work with your neighbors on State Street for the best look possible. And I'd just like to make a final comment, since I have a couple seconds left, that I totally agree with Ms. Ensberg about the potted plants. There's things that we could do to make them look better. Some of the boxes have broken up. They look like they're dying. They look like they haven't been maintained. And I think some effort needs to be put into the box plants that are there now. Thank you very much. And thank you for all the work you do.
Thank you, Ms. Wiscombe. Next, Ms. Perea.
Okay, and next we have Scott Burns. Scott Burns, if you'd like to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Good, thank you. Parklets, less is better. Thank you, the committee, for doing this, the architects for doing this, the group that's listening. Why I say less is better for parklets is that it just really looked very nice. I ride my bike up State Street every Thursday morning about 7:30 or 8 in the morning, and there's hardly anyone there, but I still walk between Haley and Coda, and it would look nicer if everything would look similar. The other reason why I bring up is less is better, because that's going to be simpler to remove the parklets when they need to be removed. And currently, I believe the standards for restaurant outdoor seating is whenever there is a parade, the restaurant outdoor seating needs to be removed. And I believe there's 6 or 7 parades, Veterans Day, Solstice, Christmas Parade, Fiesta, the Children's Parade. So we just want to make it easy for the restaurants to be able to remove the parklets at the same time for those 6 or 7 days a year. One thing I noticed while I did the survey, there was no question or way I could really comment on that. I would like to make sure that parades could still stay on State Street. That's my entire comment. Thank you very much for all your work.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Next speaker, please.
Okay, and next we have Richard Clausen. Richard Clausen, if you'd like to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Good morning, Ms. Perea. Thank you very much, and thank you to the subcommittee members. As a retired healthcare practitioner, I've always understood health and safety codes as well as building codes as serving the public's health and welfare against those unforeseen circumstances and hazards. I sense, though, that many merchants may view these technicalities as impediments to their commerce. And I think that they may undervalue the parklet guidelines that you have already created which present a speed reading of sometimes complex requirements. I think that they're great. They're excellent, and they're going to be improved by many of the lengthy suggestions from the presenters. My only suggestion is that they be promoted as citywide guidelines, not just for the downtown State Street area. My recent email to you was not so much to call out non-compliant parklets outside the downtown as to show how other merchants may need guidance for offering their services and their products in ways that are safe against not only COVID, but also stormwater flows, pedestrian trip hazards, and electrical jeopardies in bad weather. I think the corridors, the commercial corridors like Milpas and Outer State and Cliff Drive on the Mesa might also benefit as well. And that a small campaign to offer the parklet guidelines in those commercial areas would benefit them as well as their patrons. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clausen. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Fred Sweeney. Fred Sweeney, go ahead and unmute yourself, and you're welcome to speak.
And setting all the State Street for the 9 blocks. And just a couple of comments about the parklets. I'm not really understanding how big these parklets are getting for each restaurant. Some of them appear to be in front of retail stores. So I'm very concerned that the retail component, what little is left on State Street, is not getting the attention that certainly the restaurant functions are getting. And I understand that. I also understand, I took a Sunday walk this Sunday, as I do quite often, and got downtown and realized that as the restaurants are starting to enclose these parklets, they're becoming rooms. So does the health people, our scientists, really understand whether or not that then determines that it's an indoor space rather than an outdoor space? I think that needs to be looked at. I also know by doing Sunday morning walks, I could still get hit by a bike, as I did this Sunday. Didn't get hit, but almost. And also, that's the point about 9 or 9:30 that the homeless start to wake up. And they're in spaces in between, in alcoves, et cetera. So that's still a problem. And then the other thing with the parklets, between the parklets and the face of the restaurants, those now get encumbered by reception areas, et cetera, and the average person walking down doesn't know whether, oh, am I supposed to be able to walk through that space, or am I in the restaurant? So I think you need to address the 6 to 10 feet between the parklets and the front entrance of the restaurant. The restaurant yours, look at every step there people have to take as dollars spent. So there's going to be a continued conflict unless there's some rules set up about what happens between the parklet and the front of the store. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mr. Sweeney. Next speaker, please, Ms. Burke.
Okay, and the next speaker we have is Kellum DeForest. Mr. DeForest, if you'd like to go ahead and unmute yourself. Kellum DeForest. You'll need to unmute yourself in order to speak. Madam Chair, why don't we go on to the next person? The next speaker is Anna Gott. Ms. Gott, if you'd like to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Good morning. The first thing I want to bring up is the fact that we really do need to eliminate all plastic astroturf from the public right-of-way and from private parking lots. It is damaged due to the sun, wear and tear, and it gets into the environment very easily. This just really never should have been allowed, and we need to prohibit it immediately, and that would require council action. This is not something that should be done through enforcement, because that will take years to actually accomplish, if ever. Regarding people's ability to walk on sidewalks, that is still a problem, and there are other cities that prohibit dining to be set up on sidewalks and require that it actually be set up in the street if this is what we're doing. And this council really needs to take action on this item, because it's not just a, public health and safety issue, but it really is an issue of ADA access. People cannot access individual stores from the street because there is no ramp. And they often feel unsafe to actually travel in the middle of the street because they will, as Mr. Sweeney said, get hit by a bike or almost be hit by a bike. We also need to think about this too. We already know that there is a new virus mutation or new variant in the UK. What are we actually going to do when it hits the United States and becomes as prevalent as it is in the UK right now? We will have to actually change the spacing for outdoor dining, because 6 feet is simply not enough, even in an outdoor space, when we know that this virus is actually 70% more infectious than what we currently have. Regarding the parklets right now, they're an eyesore. They need to be eliminated now rather than later. And this actually should have been done before we actually went ahead and allowed parklets. Final thoughts. San Francisco allows any individual to sit in a parklet, even though someone may have actually paid money to set up a parklet. And it's because they're requiring seating to be available for everyone. And we have removed the seating from State Street. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Thank you. Next speaker, please, Ms.
Okay, the next speaker is Kellum DeForest. You're free to speak.
I'm trying to unmute. Am I unmuted now?
Yes, you are.
Good. Thank you very much. I am concerned about the parades. They need to be accommodated if they're going to be on State Street, which I hope they will be. And I'm also concerned about the lack of uniformity in the various parklets. I think it would make State Street too busy if all the parklets were different, with different style chairs and space. There needs to be an overall design for the parklets, and maybe not with many, and they need to be regulated of how many they are to a block. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeForest. Any additional speakers, Ms. Perea?
Yes, the next speaker is Trey Pinner. Trey Pinner, go ahead and unmute yourself and you should be able to speak.
Yes, you can hear me okay? Sorry, we always have to ask that question. We never know for sure, but I got the head nod, so thank you and good afternoon. I just wanted to let you know, as the chair of the Downtown Parking Committee, we took action at our meeting earlier this month to appoint the chair and the vice chair just as liaisons to come listen each month to your meetings and report back to our committee issues. And I will then be able to, during these comment periods, let you know what we might have input for you on. So we want to just let you know we stand ready to help you and assist you as an extra resource for this effort that we're taking on, and just want to let you know that we took that action. And also to help you in other areas, I know we often lose sight of what we refer to as the zero blocks, the first blocks in between, the side streets off of State Street, because those are some of our parking resources, and those have parklets as well. So we're there to help you and give you advice in the future on how we see those going. We understand that you are in a very unique situation now. We're trying to solve some short-term problems, and we're sometimes worried about the long-term effects. But I understand that you're trying to resolve some short-term problems, and I think the issues we struggle with the most so far at downtown parking is the bike issue, how that's a lot of input. I know you're getting a lot of input there, is the bike issue. And the issue of the parklets consistency, which I appreciate the reports today from the architects. We think consistency is the key to making these parklets look more acceptable to the community. So again, let us know how we as the downtown parking can assist you in your efforts, and we appreciate all you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pinner, and we appreciate the engagement of downtown parking in this as well. Next speaker, please, Ms. Perea.
Okay, and the final speaker is Stephanie Armstrong. Stephanie Armstrong, go ahead and unmute yourself, and you're welcome to speak.
Hi, thank you so much, council members and the State Street Subcommittee for your time today. I'm Stephanie Armstrong, the Chief Marketing Officer for the Santa Barbara South Coast Chamber of Commerce and our hospitality committee that we host. I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to address a lot of the concerns for the downtown parklets, but also want to ask the consideration for a number of the businesses who are going through a lot right now in the closures financially, to ensure that any of the actions that we take to implement policies, that we make sure that they can be able to reach those goals financially, to ensure that they don't take on additional financial burden at this time. And then also just additionally, always a concern is top of mind, lighting in downtown and how we make sure that we illuminate our street for safety. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Armstrong. And we'll just check one more time, Ms. Perea. Did anyone raise their hands during that last comment?
No further speakers, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. With that, we will close public comment and I'll open it up to my colleagues. Mayor Pro Tem, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I have a few comments and maybe discussion, but I love the updates. I'm so grateful to those who volunteered their time to come forward with this, and we really needed it. And we continue to need it. Some specific things that I really appreciated about these particular plans, the goal for consistency and uniformity while still allowing creativity, bringing in those art elements. I think that has really sorely been missing. Flexibility and placement is really important, as we heard about possibly in the future parades or changing parameters and keeping nimble. I mean, we have to really be looking at that. Just working the aesthetics into every step of the process. I mean, some of the things that I think don't stand out to some of us who don't have this training in aesthetics, like whether to have a picket fence or not, or different feel of different materials, that we really really benefit from the input of those who are experts in this, have spent lifetime and career studying this. I like the suggestions of the lightings from the plants. I think you and I, Madam Chair, have seen the effects of lighting on the De La Guerra Plaza, that what a difference lighting can make where it's from and all the different ways. So I think we were very simplistic and rushed in our decision to just do string lights because that was maybe approved by HLC at some time in the past. And I think we're seeing here the true benefits of inviting and taking into account all these types of considerations. I think we are too small of a committee to make these big decisions that affect really bottom line economics. I mean, these things are expensive, and we're hearing about how businesses are invested in one way and now they're worried about having to invest in a different way. The city is investing in one way with certain types of potted plants or lights, and maybe it's better that we invested in a different way that maybe didn't even cost as much. I think we are really short-circuiting our own benefits by not having this larger conversation. So this is a first step and is so excellent. So the lighting from the plants, the comments about the green bike lane, I had misgivings about the color green and being so bright and down the center. And if green means go and go faster for bikes, I really like that suggestion of walking only or a maximum speed limit on there, which does bring into question also that if we have electric docking stations, the mixed messaging of that. But to the parklets themselves, I think it's really important, this holistic approach, that, you know, the bulk and scale of your parklet blocking the visuals of the other businesses, the other retail businesses, versus the lower profile that allows you to see that other businesses are there and are open. I think we need to really be looking at that holistic, block-wide, all the businesses, and then also the community experience of being able to walk on the street safely. So these are really, this move towards uniformity but allowing creativity is really welcome. I think the flexibility, I agree that these should be citywide guidelines. I mean, I think parklets are parklets, and let's just make it moving forward, understanding what Ms. Elander said and others have echoed that this was always intended to be moving forward through the interim, but recognizing that what we're doing in this interim is really setting footprints for the long-term future. And this is, we're just, you know, once people have invested and then, you know, it's a long-term impact if we're not looking at that. So, I mean, I think we really need to look at the lighting again and other things like that. What's really exciting about this, and really thank you for allowing it at this committee level, is just about how clear it is how much we benefit from design standards on State Street. And even this was a 2-week effort by minds who work on this all the time, and already the benefits of that are so clear of what kind of guidance that we could be getting and that they've been wanting to give us and continue to want to give us. I really think it's time to invest in professional downtown master plan. I think we've never seen this much change in downtown on State Street ever in our history like this, and at this rapid a pace. And I think we really owe it to our city, to ourselves. I think in the long run, it'll end up stimulating the economy. I think it'll end up saving money to have these design standards in place instead of the push-pull of changing all the time. I just really believe it's time to come back to council, invest fully in a master plan that is inviting not these only who have worked on this, but also the business owners, the other retailers, the arts community. We heard from downtown parking. Clearly, we need to be talking to downtown parking and getting their input. Like, clearly, every time someone calls in and says, oh, but there's this idea, that's representing a whole group of people that we would benefit. We would be better and more beautiful and more honoring of our downtown. So I'll just keep making the recommendation that I believe we need to be investing in a master plan for the benefit of our city. I think it's time, and I'm so grateful for this work here, but we're setting things in place that are going to have really long-term impact. And this was a great example of minimally what can be done and what really needs to be done. And thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And I will just add very briefly in response to that. I think we are intending to go back to council in very short order with the results of the survey and the various conversations that have been had with the different commissions. So I think the opportunity to have that really important conversation, as you describe, is very quickly approaching, as it should be. So that's good news. Councilmember Gutierrez, do you have any comments at this time?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I just want to thank everyone for participating in this and for the presentation. Obviously, this is something that's living and breathing and changing as the days go on. So I just want to remind everyone to be patient and to be understanding. We were listening to what you're saying and hearing the needs of the business owners and also the residents of the city. And yeah, one of my main concerns is is the affordability of these parklets for the business owners and making sure that, you know, it's not going to put them out too much. Also, the environmental impacts of these parklets. Just want to make sure that, you know, they're not causing more damage to the environment than what's needed. And the other thing is just, again, with the bicycling, I feel like we might need to have a whole separate meeting about that to try to come up with solutions and ideas to try to address that issue. I don't know if we could do that at this committee, or maybe we need a separate town hall or something like that, but that's something for us to think about and discuss. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gutierrez. Agreed, and really appreciate that comment. I'll make my comments very brief, and I'm going to confine them as closely as I can to the parklet design guidelines as they've been presented. First, as my colleagues have said, again, just sincere appreciation for the folks that have dedicated their time and done so in such a compressed timeline. It really is a testament to your skill and your ability and your love for our community. So my thanks to that, for that to you. I also just want to point out that as these design guidelines move forward, I hope we can come up with a clear statement about applicability, as my colleagues have said, and in response to Ms. Elander and some of the other business owners that we've been communicating with. I think that it really behooves us to be very clear about when these guidelines apply and when business owners can and will be expected to implement them. So whether that's when there's a material change to an existing parklet or a new parklet is put in place, I think we owe it to everyone to be as clear as possible about when these guidelines will come into play. Certainly agree. I would love to see these, to the extent possible, apply citywide. I agree. I think Ms. Sneddon said a parklet is a parklet. I think that's very true. And, you know, with that, I think bracketing that we will, and I think this will come up in the next agenda items, we will be having a larger conversation about downtown State Street and its future. And we will be bringing this back to council and the vision statement back to council, where we can talk about much of the broader issues that both of my colleagues bring up and chart a path forward. But specifically related to these design guidelines and these interim guidelines, I guess I want to put it to my colleagues whether we should send this specific set of guidelines. And again, understanding and bracketing that there is a whole larger conversation that will be occurring simultaneously and is scheduled at council. Do either of my colleagues have thoughts about whether we would like to present or have these presented to the full council at some point earlier or in early 2021? I don't know if either of my colleagues want to jump on and have thoughts about that, or alternatively, I guess we could just say staff go forth and continue working with these professionals. Any thoughts, Ms. Sneddon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm ready to move forward on these. I think this is the part of the function of this committee, is to do the nimble work that we can when we can. And our agendas, I think, are fairly packed at the very beginning of the year. So I hate to hold back what could be progress on that, but I do think it needs to come as the full package when it can.
Mr. Dayton? Okay, great. That got a thumbs up.
Yes, we can move forward with the guidelines. I think we're on version 27 already. 28 can be this week, and 29 can be next week. And we have enough information that we can put that out there, and then we can continue to work with Anthony's team to refine that as need be.
Awesome. Well, that sounds great. It seems like we have a clear path forward. And again, with my sincere thanks to everyone who dedicated themselves to this effort, and with some real excitement about what this interim space on State Street will look like, I will close this agenda item and we can move on, Mr. Harris, to the next item, which I believe is just a brief update. I know we only have a couple minutes left. Mr. Harris?
Correct. Madam Chair, this is update on future of State Street. Next item, or next slide, please, Ms. Perea. So just update, as referenced in the conversation, we are in the information gathering stage. So we have a State Street website, as I've reported out, the survey is online. As you will note, the website there is listed in the first bullet point. As of the end of last week, the survey had been open for 2 weeks. We have had 3,600 responses. Obviously, we're continuing finding creative means to push the survey information out there. In the January water bill, there will be an announcement and a notice of the survey availability. Just a reminder, it will be closing end of January, and likewise, it's referenced in the survey, but we have a dedicated email address for individuals to comment in. There's a character limit, 250 character limit for the open-ended questions, but we acknowledge and ask if folks have greater amount of information they want to provide, they can email at that dedicated email address. And so with that, I'll conclude this and really jump into public comment so we can try to bring closure.
Thank you. Any quick questions? Sorry, that's my dog. Any questions from my call? Hearing none, we will go to public comment.
Okay, we have one speaker, Marge Caffarelli. Marge, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, Ms. Caffarelli, you're welcome to speak.
Thank you so much, and thank you, members of council and staff. I just would like to reiterate how important I think it is that this committee make a recommendation to council, if that's the role of this committee, that a master plan for State Street that includes some of the big issues that the city is facing incorporates, because the future of State Street really relies on all of that. You know, I mean, I thought this presentation was terrific. It's great to see the folks that live and work in Santa Barbara contributing so much. But the economic development and design of our downtown is multifaceted. And I think that it has to be a process that incorporates not only the downtown, but also housing, Paseo Nuevo, State Street. And, you know, it really is a plan that will tell staff what the council's direction clearly is, and all of our stakeholders in Santa Barbara, what the direction is, what the rules are, so that people can begin to move forward and execute. Public-private partnerships, private development. I think all of these things are working hand in hand, and the city is going to have the right staff, the political will, and determination to make this happen. So I think that this is a great start, and I commend you for doing it, and I congratulate the folks that have come together to work with the city. So thank you for this opportunity to speak, and hope you all have a happy holiday.
Thank you, Ms. Caffarelli. Appreciate it. Excuse me, any additional public commenters, Ms. Correa?
Yes, there are others with hands raised, and the next is Leslie Wiscombe. Ms. Wiscombe, do you want to go ahead and speak?
Thank you very much. I wanted to just speak. I hope that you will meld the results from the city survey with the previously completed AIA survey to consider responses from a majority of respondents in the formulation of a purpose statement for your work that you're doing on the subcommittee. I believe these results, coupled with Mr. Harris's forthcoming economic development plan, will be a cornerstone in the foundation of a master plan for State Street and the downtown area, as Mayor Pro Tem Sneddon discussed. On last Friday, the De La Guerra Plaza Revitalization Committee, as two of you council members know, You voted unanimously to forward the concept plan to the full council for review and consideration. And due to its connectivity to State Street, this should not be seen as a standalone, but rather part of a larger vision for the area. So please consider the foundational elements of the surveys, both the AIA and the city survey, as well as the email address where you don't have to limit your words, the economic development plan that's forthcoming, and the De La Guerra Plaza concept plan when considering your purpose statement, and hopefully forwarding a recommendation to the full council to develop a much needed master plan for the downtown area. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wiscombe. Next speaker, please.
Okay, the next speaker is Anna Gott. Ms. Gott, feel free to go ahead and speak.
Good afternoon. So regarding the AIA and city actually merging a survey, this survey wasn't actually done by individuals who understand how to actually put together questions for a survey. Instead, it has actually been done by people that have specific objectives, which is to, my opinion, ensure that State Street is closed and that the public right-of-way becomes basically commercialized for private enterprises at little or actual no cost. We have no requirement that the space be at 50% of the square footage cost for a retail location or commercial location on State Street, which is what its actual value is. We are also eliminating the participation of individuals who don't participate in city government as it is right now, those that may not be able to read or actually read English or take a survey online. Why aren't we actually having people at all of our grocery stores or other places where residents actually go? And we don't actually have something that identifies people as being a tourist taking the survey or someone who lives here versus someone who just works here or maybe is a developer or property owner. Regarding property on State Street right now, we do realize that the Canary was required to provide parking and it is a hotel. But we now have Scientology building that's being turned into hotel and they do not require parking. We are actually encouraging the development of hotels downtown where you say you want housing and we're not requiring that those hotels provide parking. We also have multiple paseos that are being either eliminated or in danger of being eliminated or portions of them eliminated by council action. So we have a huge problem that you need to address, and obviously a master plan is needed.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
There are no further speakers, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Perea. With that, we will close public comment and I'll open it to my colleagues if they have any. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just briefly, I really applaud the idea of melding the city responses and the AIA charrette that is, 500 pages of very thorough responses with our responses as well. And then I think it's nice to include the De La Guerra Plaza plan and just start the Library Plaza, just start to bring those pieces together to integrate them. And we're all really looking forward to this economic development plan. And of course, it will have to be integrated with that and with public-private partnerships. And to Ms. Scott's comment, I really want to keep encouraging staff to reach out to locals. She's had some good ideas about how to do that, and especially our Spanish-speaking community, but also, not everybody who comes downtown and really reaching out to them for why and what might bring them downtown. So I think those are excellent suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, appreciate that. And we will close that item and move on to the final item, which I believe is about our next meeting, which will be after the new year. Mr. Harris?
Correct. Ms. Perea, if you could advance to the topic of next steps in subcommittee meeting of 2021. So as we have been referencing, we are envisioning preparation. The anticipation next steps will be collecting the survey feedback and reminding the subcommittee the survey is closing the end of January. We've got some suggestions that came in of thinking this very inclusive holistically of including the AA survey information as a part of that. So that's we'll kind of broaden the scope of information that we'd be presenting. Ultimately, this body would be developing a vision statement. Staff will be facilitating the development of that. And then any other recommendations that this committee would like to have as companion pieces with the vision statement. I think one natural, logical one is to put forth a recommendation as to how to address the closure of State Street as a foundational policy piece. But I'm hearing some other reference remarks regarding effort and process going forward, be it master planning efforts and integration of other studies and things of that nature. I'm proposing a subcommittee meeting date of January 25th. That's, I believe, the fourth Monday of January. I think we'll be close enough to the end. I would assume this will take more than one meeting. And then at that point, we can revisit a meeting schedule. I was hearing some frustration of setting meetings and then canceling. And so I think we'll be thoughtful as to what understanding the amount of scope and perspective of the subcommittee as we're gathering and presenting the information. So the 25th, I think, will be kicking that vision statement process off and probably doing a review of the collective amount of information that we have before us. And so I imagine this will be a series of meetings and could look at holding special meetings following, kind of predicated on the tempo and speed as to which the subcommittee is prepared to work. So with that, I look forward to kind of questions and comments from the subcommittee. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any questions from my colleagues? Mayor Pro Tem.
No questions, just appreciation and thank you and looking forward to it. Thank you.
Great, and I believe we do have at least one public commenter who may be speaking on the last item. So Ms. Perea, if we could open public comment, please.
Yes, we do have a hand raised, and that would be Edward France. Edward France, if you'd like to go ahead and speak, you're welcome to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Chair Harmon, members of the committee. I just wanted to take this moment, I actually meant to speak on the previous item, but I just wanted to thank you all and staff and the volunteers through AIA, through Planning Commission, Chair Grumbine, for all of the work that's gone in, both for this long-term planning and also for all the decisions that have to be made in this odd interim period that we're in. And I want to wish you all a happy solstice and a great holiday season and appreciate the work that you have invested in. I also am the vice chair of downtown parking, and I will continue to participate with you all in the next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. France. Any other commenters, Ms. Perea?
No further speakers.
Thank you. And I'll open it up one more time to my colleagues if they have any final thoughts for us. Hearing none, I will just close by stating, oh, Mr. Gutierrez, please go ahead.
I just wanted to say thank you for everyone for the hard work this past year, and may we all have a happy holidays and a happy new year.
Thank you very much. I'm going to echo that. I will just say, I know this has been a bit of a bumpy process figuring out where we're going and how we're going to get there. But I think today certainly proved to everyone that we are all committed and rowing in the same direction, certainly. And we all have the best interests of our downtown and our whole city at heart. So my sincere gratitude to my colleagues, to staff, to the amazing folks from our community who have worked and will continue to work on this issue. And I hope everyone stays safe and healthy and has a happy holiday season. See you all in 2021. This meeting's adjourned.